I woke up at 2:17 a.m. to a sound that didn't belong in the dark, a hollow metallic snap that echoed through the pipes like a bone breaking. Outside, crickets hummed over the smell of damp soil and fresh-cut grass. Then my pressure alarm started chirping from the pump shed low flow. I pulled on boots and checked the monitor. Zero output. When I rolled back the security footage, I saw them. Two contractors in reflective vests, flashlights, one kneeling at the easement valve near the curb, the other holding a saw. They shut off the gate valve, then they cut my well line, calm, methodical. Like they were trimming hedges. By sunrise, my faucets were coughing air, but so were the houses across the street, and 2 doors down, and the corner lot with the stone mailbox. They thought they were isolating me. They weren't. And to understand why an HOA would risk cutting into a permitted water line in the middle of the night, you have to understand how I ended up here in the first place. I'm 48, spent 23 years working utility contracts across 3 counties, water lines, lift stations, emergency repairs after floods. I bought my lot back when this was still open farmland and wind, before the developer carved it into cul-de-sacs with matching stone facades and decorative lantern posts. My well was already drilled, agricultural permit, county inspected, clean aquifer. When municipal water finally reached this side of town, mine was legally grandfathered in. Perfect pressure, zero debt tied to it. I'm not flashy. I keep records in binders, label my shutoff valves, grease what needs greasing. My dad used to say, if it's buried, map it. If it's signed, copy it. I took that seriously. My wife works from home. My mother lives in the suite we added after my dad passed. Water isn't landscaping to us. It's dialysis equipment, cooking, showers, stability. I dealt with HOA notes about mailbox shades and grass height. Petty stuff. But when they told me to abandon a lawful, permitted well because it didn't match the neighborhood aesthetic, that's when I stopped nodding politely. And then the new HOA president decided uniformity mattered more than legality. He moved into the biggest house on the corner, stone columns, 3-car garage, the kind of place that looks staged even when someone's living in it. Real estate attorney, early 40s, firm handshake, camera-ready smile. Within 3 months, he was HOA president. He talked about community cohesion, like it was a sacred duty. At the first meeting I attended under his leadership, he clicked through a PowerPoint about property value consistency. Slide 12 was about utilities. He said private wells created perception issues. Said full municipal hookup would modernize the neighborhood. I told him mine was permitted and grandfathered. He smiled like I'd missed the point. After that, the letters changed. Fines for non-compliant infrastructure. Certified mail. References to covenant clauses stretched thin. Selective enforcement dressed up as policy. Then I learned the contractor bidding the municipal expansion project was his college roommate. That's when it stopped feeling like aesthetics. The question wasn't whether my well was legal. It was why he needed it gone so badly. And when paperwork didn't move me, they decided to try something else. The certified letters started arriving every Friday. Thick envelopes, formal tone. Notice of noncompliance, intent to lien. Their attorney cited something called a utility uniformity clause, arguing that independent water sources disrupted neighborhood standards. I'd read the covenants before, twice. That clause had never been about supply lines. It was about visible fixtures. But they were stretching it, and stretching costs money. Neighbors who used to wave from their driveways suddenly had questions about resale impact. Someone told my wife they heard our well might be outdated infrastructure. Funny how fast a rumor travels when it protects property values. I didn't argue in the street. I went back to the documents, county filings, Phase 1 development plans, easement maps. That's when I saw a phrase buried in the utility addendum, shared emergency feed capacity. No explanation, just a reference number. I sent a written request for clarification silence. 2 weeks later, a notice went up about contractors conducting easement compliance inspections. That's when the pressure shifted from paper to proximity. If they recorded a lien, refinancing was off the table. Lines were narrowing, and then, instead of waiting on the law, they reached for a saw. By the time the sun came up, the neighborhood group chat was chaos. No water pressure, anyone else's shower just die, my sprinklers won't turn on. At 6:03 a.m., someone posted a photo of a dry kitchen faucet, then another. 6 houses in total. The contractors told a neighbor they were disconnecting an unauthorized feed line. That's what they wrote on the work order, too. Authorized. I walked back into my pump shed and looked at the gauges again. 0 flow past the easement junction. Clean cut. They hadn't just capped my line, they severed the outgoing branch. That's when I felt it, not anger, recognition. I went to the workshop and pulled a laminated map from the top drawer. Phase 1 utility layout. Dated 15 years ago, before municipal supply was stable, my agricultural well fed 6 homes under a recorded shared easement agreement, temporary, but renewable until municipal certification. I'd kept the map because my father told me to keep everything. The HOA president clearly hadn't read the contingency filing. But knowing that wasn't enough, I needed proof that would hold up in daylight. The county recorder's office smells like paper and dust and old carpet. I've spent enough years in utility work to know that answers live in buildings like that. I pulled the full Phase 1 development packet, not the summary, the whole thing. There it was. Temporary shared potable water easement, automatically renewable until municipal stability certification. Automatically renewable. I checked municipal filings next. Stability certification for the North Loop was never recorded. Pressure, irregularities, documented but unresolved, which meant the contingency never expired. Legally, my well wasn't just private property. It was an authorized backup supply for 6 homes. They hadn't simply damaged my line. They interfered with an active shared utility easement. In this state, tampering with a permitted water source tied to multiple residences can trigger a state utility commission review. Not criminal, not dramatic, but expensive and very public. I stepped outside and called an old colleague who now works county utilities enforcement. I kept my voice calm. He didn't, and within 48 hours, this stopped being an HOA disagreement. The inspectors showed up in marked county trucks just after 9. No sirens, no drama. Clipboards, gauges, quiet authority. They examined the cut near the easement junction, photographed the valve assembly, checked the permit number stamped on my wellhead cap. One of them shook his head before he even finished measuring. Because the well fed multiple residences under a recorded easement, interference qualified as potential public utility disruption. That moved it out of HOA policy and into county oversight. Then they pulled municipal pressure logs for the North Loop. Fluctuations, drops below stability threshold. The certification had never been filed for a reason. My backup line was still legally active. The real shift came 2 days later. Through a records request, we obtained an email sent to the HOA president months earlier from a former board member attaching the shared easement document subject line. "You need to review this before pushing hookups." He responded, "Not relevant. We're proceeding." At the same time, expedited municipal hookup contracts were being negotiated with his college roommate's firm. That's when tension turned heavy. The inspectors temporarily shut down the affected stretch pending review. Water trucks idled at the curb, and suddenly the next HOA meeting wasn't optional. The clubhouse smelled like burnt coffee and warm plastic. Folding chairs lined up in uneven rows. Cases of bottled water stacked against the wall like quiet evidence. The president opened the meeting with his usual polish. "Unfortunate infrastructure confusion," he called it. "Temporary inconvenience." Then the county inspector stood, no raised voice, no theatrics. He stated clearly that an authorized shared potable water easement had been physically severed without county notification. That action violated code and exposed the association to civil liability tied to multiple residences. You could feel the air change. When it was my turn, I didn't argue. I handed out copies of the recorded easement and the municipal instability logs. Paper sliding across tables. "Quiet," someone asked. "So this wasn't an accident," the inspector answered before I did. The president tried to blame the contractors. Said they misunderstood instructions. The inspector flipped to the work order, signed by HOA executive authority. Silence settled hard over the room. Not outrage, not shouting, just the sound of people recalculating who they'd trusted. And what came next wasn't dramatic. It was worse. The insurance adjuster's letter came 2 weeks later. Partial denial. The phrase unauthorized infrastructure interference was underlined twice. Coverage would not extend to deliberate alteration of a permitted utility connection without county approval. That left the HOA exposed. A special assessment was floated to cover legal risk and emergency water service. The room turned on itself fast. Numbers have a way of cutting through loyalty. Within days, the president resigned for personal reasons. The expedited hookup contract was quietly terminated. His roommate's trucks disappeared from the neighborhood. The board voted to fund a licensed reconnection of my well line and upgrade the shared backup system properly, this time with county oversight. I agreed to sign off on repairs with one condition. The easement language would be permanently clarified to protect independent, lawful utilities going forward. No damages beyond repair costs. No victory lap, just documentation done right. Because in the end, this was never about revenge. It was about something my father taught me a long time ago. The morning the system came fully back online, I stood in the yard and listened. Sprinklers hissed in steady rhythm. Faucets inside ran smooth, no sputter, no air, just pressure the way it's supposed to be. The street felt different, quieter, less performative. Respect has a sound. It's the absence of whispering. I mounted a small metal plaque inside the pump shed above the pressure gauge. 3 words: know what you own. Control without knowledge is dangerous. But knowledge without ego? That's leverage. The HOA formed a utilities oversight committee after that. Open records, transparent reporting, fewer speeches, more reading. I didn't win anything flashy. I just kept what was already mine. So let me ask you something. How many HOAs are making decisions about infrastructure they've never actually read? And next week, I'll tell you what happened when a city tried to claim a drainage easement that didn't exist.